Hyvät katsojat, tervetuloa AlfaStudioon, jossa meillä on tänään hyvin mielenkiintoinen vieras, Inna Rogatchi, tutkija, kirjailija, valokuvaaja ja filmintekijä, joka on hiljattain saanut valmiiksi dokumenttielokuvan kuuluisasta eurooppalaista natsien metsästäjästä Simon Wiesenthalista. Tuon elokuvan nimi on The Lessons of Survival, selviytymisen oppitunnit, ja tänään keskustelemme tuosta elokuvasta ja niistä kohtaamisista, joita vieraallamme oli Simon Wiesenthalin kanssa. Inna, thank you for joining us at Alpha TV.
Pleasure.
You have quite a history with your artistic life, but before we go into that, you've been living in Finland for more than 20 years.
25.
How did you end up here?
Okay. So to make very long story short, my husband, Michael Rogatchi, an artist, and I, we came here in 1988. So it's about over 25 years. And from St. Petersburg. And the reason of it was very personal and very humanitarian and human, with enormous help of our Finnish friends, many of them. We tried to save life of our only daughter, Julia, who contracted cancer because of Chernobyl. And this was the main reason. So she died within a year in 1989, and so we stayed behind, stayed with the place of she's buried at, and became Finnish citizens and integrated, in my opinion, very well into Finnish life.
Where do you live here?
Where? In Turku. In Turku. And this was the place where Julia got her treatment, and it became our place, our home. And we spend part of our time in Italy every year, and also frequently visiting Israel and United States, and working all the way around. But the home is Turku, and that's how we ended up here.
Okay. You have quite an impressive artistic career behind, and of course coming, but how did you start doing those things you've been doing for decades now?
Well, my main occupation in life is writing, and this is not occupation, it's a way of life. It's as natural for me as to breathe or to read. I started to write when I was 12. And never stop, and I never will. And when people are frightening of retirement, I said that I have no such problem because I have so many projects in my pipeline for writing that's no problem with that. So the writing is the main occupation, and then with writing comes scholarship and research. And it's because, well, academic side always was also strong with me, so it's a part of combining. And in my writing, a part of many articles and essays, when I'm concentrating on books, I'm doing what's called the documental prose. So I believe in human story. And but through the human story, you always can see phenomena, and this is what I'm trying to research, if you wish. And I always was interested in a combination of three things: and history, culture, and mentality. And when you are doing a product which is synthesized through these three things, it always comes as many interesting and unexpected surprises.
Okay.
So this was the beginning.
Okay. So today we are talking about the film, the documentary you have made about Simon Wiesenthal. And this film has been acquired by major well-known universities and institutions around the world. And its European premiere was in the beginning of this year in the European Parliament. How was the reception of the film?
Very good. So far, so good. Touch the wood if there is. Yes, the film has its European premiere at the European Parliament and the special seminar which was commemorating the International Holocaust Day. And there were very many people from all over Europe, and both senior and younger ones, which I personally like very much because senior generations know about the Second World War and Holocaust more, I believe, than younger generation. And when I saw in auditorium a lot of young people, I was very pleased about it. And after the premiere, people were discussing, members of parliament from Finland and Sweden and United Kingdom and Poland, Czech, Canada also were present there. And they were, the main point was there's a lot of new things in this film which people cherished. And for me, it was a big compliment and important thing.
Okay. So let's have a clip of the film and then we continue.
Yet before her disappearance, Vera Eichmann has made an efficient effort to try to declare her husband dead. Wiesenthal did his best to prevent it.
I received information that Mrs. Eichmann decided to declare her husband dead. He testified under oath that he saw that he was shot to death in Prague and on this street and so. I sent one of my people to Prague, and what we find out, that this Karl Lukács is married to the sister of Mrs. Eichmann. And we have witnesses that Eichmann was, after 6th of May, in Austria.
The matter was closed. The Austrian judge did not declare Adolf Eichmann dead. Wiesenthal was still looking into any development in the Eichmann family very closely.
Inna, how did you end up meeting this famous Simon Wiesenthalin?
So I was wondering about it myself many times, and of course Simon Wiesenthalin is not the only giant person, giant in point of history, meaning a person whom I met and became friendly with, but he's one of the most rare persons I ever met and who ever existed, I think. It all started with several books about him, and which I was reading, and for one of them, the Wiesenthal file, I have got his permission for translation and rights for translation this book. And so it was the sort of basic on which we started our discussion. And we had a very good friend, both of us. It always comes through people. And both of us had a very good friend, famous writer Alan Levy. He's dead now. He passed away 10 years ago. And Alan was the son, if you remember film The Marathon Man, Alan's father was a prototype for the hero. Mm-hmm. So very, very special person. And he introduced us, my husband and me, to Simon Wiesenthal. And without that, of course, that would be impossible.
Do you remember the first time you met with him?
Always.
Where was it?
It was in Vienna, and I remember it because, you know, I'm a professional journalist and I meet and filmmaker, and I meet a million people in my life and good in communication. I don't remember when I was so nervous as I was when I was just about to meet Simon Wiesenthalin. Also, because the place of his headquarters was in Vienna was very special. It was a sort of ordinary building, but in this building was a headquarters of Gestapo during the war. Mm-hmm. And Simon Wiesenthal very pointfully chose that location as his response, his personal response to history, if you would, history challenge. In that building, his office was on the 5th floor, and because of threats and everything, so it was always, which were directed towards him. There was an armed policeman, 1 or 2 always, sitting just next to his door. But the basement in this building, and my viewers can see it, not the basement, but the stairs. Even if I wouldn't know what happened there, what was at Gestapo headquarters was there, very special, very chilling feeling was coming out of that basement. And then Wiesenthal told us that, no, by the way, this is so in this defiance of him, of choosing this very building for staying with his documentation center, one-man institution with absolutely precious archive.
How large, how big was the offices?
No, it was...
And how many people were working there?
Well, Wiesenthal was coming there to his work every day. He had 2 secretaries. Sometimes it's some projects, some volunteer assistants. And it was like 3 rooms apartment. Not that big, but not that small, because archive was huge, and it was sort of had a good place there. I wouldn't say it was but it was modest, as everything connected with him.
When was that, when you meet?
Early 90s.
Early 90s.
Early 90s, and then we became good friends, and we got a lot of common ground, and my husband and I started visiting him. We visited him every year, several times a year.
What kind of development led into the filming? So it was not on the first meeting, but...
No. A few years. I wrote a very big, not to say even article, profile of him for Image magazine, for Image magazine here in Finland. And Raoul Grunstein was at the time, it was Raoul's baby, this magazine. It was very, very good one. And the profile got such a huge. I try to be professional, but it was so much material in that it ran into, I don't know, 35 to 50 pages, and Raoul and his people had really trouble what to do. But it was still, they published almost all of it, so huge profile, and some people were reading it with interest, and I was proposed to do a film as independent project. So I started to talk to Wiesenthal about it. And it wasn't easy because, no, he liked me and he trusted me and everything was going well, but he was in very big demand for interviews and films, and many per season, per year, per 8, say. And so I was very surprised to find one thing. It was actually happening to me that I can say how many times we met and how many things he told me. His memory worked this way. He never repeat himself. I still be amazed on this because, well, it's just amazing.
We know him through his work. But what kind of a character, what kind of a person was him?
Very, very modest. This struck me as a main feature because being as famous as he was and to keep this ability for being modest as he was. So you have to be very strong and also very convicted in your features and very modest, very humorous, brilliant sense of humor, and very sharp mind and very special, extraordinary memory to the degree that he would remember. Of course, it was, as I said in my film, his mission was to remember. And it goes both consciously and subconsciously. But to the extent he would remember a day, not like it in autumn 1963. No, he would tell you it was like 22nd April and it was 10 o'clock in the morning. So he would remember that. And I understood it this way, that after this huge shock of Holocaust and what he and his family went through, people's psyche in every one of them, every survivors, of course, psycho get this huge assault, and then how your body and your subconscious and conscious respond to that. In his case, it was this very specific memory that worked like, as he put it, to my computer. He always said, my computer is here.
So what did drive him? Was it hatred or?
Never. And that was one of the lessons to me since the beginning of our relationship and friendship. I learned so much. I said that I'm a very stubborn person myself, and I don't recognize any teachers or authorities except the Torah and Old Testament. But there are two people in my life whom I do recognize with gratitude as my teachers. One of them is Simon Wiesenthalin, and another one is very famous Soviet dissident Vladimir Bukovsky, close friend of ours. Yes, no hatred at all, never. Compassion. And I think what drive him, of course it's difficult to say because I'm not him. I think memory of his family. And he would say, for instance, I would, just to give you a sample and you will understand the drive, he would say, I am chasing somebody in Sweden for over 20 years because I saw how he killed a married couple with children. So, compassion.
So, you spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah.
Did you meet any of his family members?
Yes. Yes, we spent a lot of time with him, and it was very precious, for instance, that he was showing us around his archive, and he would show us something very special things, which was in his possession and in his possession only. We will come to that. As for his family, this is a very sensitive question and very special for him and his family, because during the Holocaust, Simon Wiesenthal's and Sila Wiesenthal's family, entire family was exterminated, 89 people. And if they wouldn't find each other in the end of the war, because each of them were thinking that another one was killed, that's it. That would be the end of two big families. But they did find each other, and I always believe that it was with God's providence. And they got a daughter, one only daughter, Paulinka. And Wiesenthal would tell me that it was a problem because there were no guests to be invited to Paulinka's wedding, no family. There were 4 people, friends.
That's sad.
Awful. But fortunately, Paulinka and her wonderful husband, Gerard, they are living in Herzliya in Israel. They're both doctors. Gerard is very famous psychotherapist, and Paulinka is a good, well-known doctor. They have 4 children and 8 grandchildren. And Gerard told us recently that, that I was always thinking about how Simon and Sila, how they were orphaned. And when I see my family with 4 children and 8 grandchildren, I think, so Simon really was not orphaned, and this has special meaning. And also very important to say that Simon loved his wife enormously. Yeah. Very rare you can see this kind of love, which is consuming both people entirely. And when Sila died in 2003, Simon, of course they were both elderly people, but Simon changed, like I didn't recognize him physically, like life went out of him.
And he died in 2005.
And he died in 18 months after that.
Yeah.
But it was a different person.
Yeah. Actually, he died in September 20, 2005.
Yes.
Almost the moment we are filming this interview.
Yes.
9 years. Why 9 years after his death, as you are releasing the film? Why not earlier?
Well, depends on several things or factors. First of all, I believe that when you're doing projects like that, project of big personality, you yourself, a filmmaker, should be ready. It requires a lot from. It's about you. When you're making biopics, you're not you have to be ready yourself, and so I think that's probably the main thing. And so you have to be ready. In meaning, you have to. I couldn't do it after his death because I was very affected by that for several years, for a couple of years. It was. I don't like this pornography in journalism when people are cashing in somebody just died and doing a 20 series biopics on. I don't believe in that. As I didn't believe, for instance, I never thought of asking Simon Wiesenthalin to come with me to camp, as many people did. And he was relieved. I said to him, we're filming camp, of course, but we're doing it ourselves. And he said, oh, thank you so much. And because yesterday, Dutch television asked me to come with them next month to the camp. I said, why you, and this is pornography. You're not torturing people this way, and in my opinion. And Wiesenthal said that, well, because this is about Anne Frank, I couldn't say no. But he was very grateful that I didn't invite him to ask him. And so this is about a maker to be ready, to be able to concentrate, appreciate, think, understand more from distance of time. But also, I think the timing itself dictates you, because if like when I was filming Wiesenthal, I was sure that I'm filming history. When I made it, now I'm sure that I made a very contemporary film because of the problems in societies, because of change, major change towards racial hatreds again. That we're witnessing. So the time sort of dictates yourself.
Right. Before continuing, let's have another clip from the documentary.
Hitler wished to make the biggest museum of the world, naturally with stolen and raped pictures and sculptures and so. That was everything for Linz.
After the liberation from a living hell, the inmates of Mauthausen were placed into the local school. From the school's window, they were observing the house of the Schicklgruber family, thus the Hitler's parents' house. They were also enjoying the view of the cemetery where the Hitler's parents were buried. The American liberators didn't come to think about such nuances, but the hundreds of people inside that school, which has been attended by the young Adolf in his childhood too, simply were maddened because of such peculiar location. One day, Simon, who could barely walk after the camp, went away from the place, never coming back there. It was better to sleep in the former camp's barrack, he told us. It was amazing to see how well attended the Hitler parents' grave was, with so many fresh flowers on it, all those years on. In March 2012, the headstones of the Hitler parents were removed from this place of neo-Nazis gathering. The footage on the screen has become a history now.
What we see happening in Europe at the moment, 2014, is that anti-Semitism is back again. Being a Jewish person, how do you see the things and developments in Europe at the moment?
Very dark. This year alone, 2014, anti-Semitism in the United Kingdom raised 400%. Anti-Semitic incidents, 400%. Anti-Semitic incidents in France raised 200% in 1 year. Aliyah from France is leading now all Aliyah from expatriation of people from Jewish origin from France and Ukraine, leading among the others. I I would never think I would live this day. I don't believe that it connected with that or another operation of Israeli forces in Gaza or other. I think this is pretext. I think that what we're witnessing, it's manifestation of very permissible racial hatred. And this is the issue. Why societies which has experience, terrible experience of Second World War and Holocaust in all these major countries like Germany and France and United Kingdom and all that we know, why authorities are permitting this kind of outpouring, very focused racial hatred?
Maybe your film was waiting for this year.
Probably.
Because it must be bringing up the topic of hatred and anti-Semitism. When you recall your discussion with Simon Wiesenthalin, how did he, or did you discuss the developments before '39 and when the Nazis came in power in Germany 1933 and the developments, what took place there and how it impacted with Jews?
Yes, he was talking about it a lot because at the time he was in Lvov, now you can pronounce it Lviv or you can pronounce it Lemberg as it was in Germany, which was the capital of Galicia, where Wiesenthal's family was originally from, and which was very educated and sophisticated place. And he was happy to be there, and he was an architect. And then at the moment when this racial hatred towards Jewish people outpoured in early 30s, he told me that they were all taken aback, all of them, completely unprepared. And the same happened in Germany when I was visiting a Kristallnacht synagogue, this big synagogue in Oranienbaumstrasse, and many other places in Berlin, and speaking with many people there, and speaking with the people who were responsible for very big and very good Berlin Jewish Museum, you can see that people were completely taken aback because they were, in Germany, they were believing that they're Germans. Germans first, Jews second. And as many people in France were thinking. But, you know, it was one thing that people like Wiesenthal and other people witnessing history telling you. Another thing when you are feeling. And I never thought that we will be feeling, the Jewish people will be feeling that something very dark and very, not even violent, but anti-human is actually focusing against you. Just because you are Jew or you are somebody else. And this is, I think, the growing tendency, unfortunately, and growing problem. And the only thing which I always sort of wondering about, okay, in early 30s, it was no precedent of the Holocaust, right? Now, in early 2020s, there is a precedent of Holocaust. So everybody knows what it is about.
Do you think that the history is repeating itself?
History always repeats itself, and there's nothing new in societies, or as we were speaking, in human nature.
How soon the Wiesenthal family was arrested? When this broke out in early 30s? So.
No. Part of his family was exterminated by 1942.
42.
By 1942. Yes. So, but yes, and also when you're researching archives and you are going to the records, and I was just very recently reading something about Austria and about Jewish persecution of Jewish people there. And it was bad in 1928 already.
Already? So it was almost 15 years, the development with all the laws and regulations regarding Jews.
When you see films like White Ribbon and you can see how it was bred into. So you can say that people like Hitler, they were instrument of evil, and there are many people were saying that Hitler wouldn't manage alone. Yes, it's true. At the same time, the kind of incarnation of or reincarnation of evil or concentration of these evil forces, which are set an example for other inclinations, people with other inclinations, not that as strong in manifestation of this hatred, but there is something metaphysical about it.
What do you see, or who do you see, who is the replica of Hitler in nowadays?
I don't think, I think that it's not a replica of Hitler. I think that Hitler itself was a replica of evil, yes, definitely.
But where this anti-Semitism comes from?
Well, I will come to that, but when you were thinking about replica, I would say Ahmadinejad from Iran, yes.
Iran's former president.
Yes, because it's a very pure evil. Some other cases are yes, bad enough, but then there are some other side. But when this evil is pure in its manifestation, that is really trouble.
Somebody and many politicians say that it's only rhetoric. What he said and what these some leaders say.
I can only say to that Hitler also started with rhetoric only, and then it came to what it came, and people. What is terrible at how many people willingly were participating in this. And I do agree with the author of this book of Willing Executioners of 2 volumes, the Professor Goldfarb, because this is the point. There are some Germans like Reverend Bonhoeffer, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who went to his death because of his normal human stand, which became heroic in the time like Hitler. And I feel such a gratitude towards such people like him. But unfortunately, the quantity of those people in German society at the time was terribly small, and this is critical mass of good was not assumed. I can tell you, when I was talking with late Lady Thatcher personally for many hours, and she told me one thing. She said, Mrs. Rogatchi, I never came to answer one question which puzzles me all my life. Since I was 17, I said, what it is, Lady Thatcher? And she said, how on the earth the country that produce such science, such literature, such music, such culture, such philosophy as Germany, how on the earth this society has turned out to be so devilish at the time. And I met her when she was well in her 70s. She said, till this day, I had no answer to that. And it's very difficult to find the one. But I think it's very, very important to see where this, as you said, where it's coming from, where anti-Semitism is. Anti-Semitism historically is coming, as we know, it always was there. And as a Jewish person, I can say that Jewish people are quite self-sufficient and very firm in their belief. Coming back historically, we can see that it could be originated as kind of rejection by the other societies. I can see that. But the kind of hatred, this hatred which transformed itself in Spanish Inquisition, beyond human understanding, right? And some colleagues could say to me, well, you said that it was no precedent of Holocaust, now we have. But yes, during 30s in Germany, people could say, well, we had an Inquisition, like a terrible precedent of absolute animalistic, barbarian hatred.
You've been living for more than 25 years in Finland. Have you come across with anti-Semitism here?
Yes and no. And in Finland, fortunately, it's of course it exists in every society. And in our case, in our life, couple of times, yes, we did. But couple of times. And it was in very sharp contrast with our previous life in Soviet Union, which it was at every single step, at every single hour. And it was the life that you know, that you... The word Jew and Jewish was not used in Soviet Union. It were ours or theirs. So it's totally different. But in Finland, I would say that it does exist, of course, but it's marginalized. While in Sweden, as we know, it's really beyond acceptable.
You were born in the Soviet state called Ukraine. As you look at your home country today, the developments, what we've seen there recently since the Olympics, when the war or pre-war development started, what do you see? How do you feel?
I feel bad, and I'm worried, and I see balkanization of big country, which is in the middle of Europe, and nobody needs that. And it's a big issue, and we can come to details of it. But as we're talking about Jewish aspect and everything today, I would go to that because it's important. And before the change of regime in Ukraine, still without changes, there are registered 27, I made my research, and I'm very responsible in what I'm doing, 27 registered neo-Nazi organizations and parties.
Did you say 27?
27.
Registered neo-Nazi parties in Ukraine today?
Today, yes.
That's something we don't read in Helsingin Sanomat.
Yes, and this is very important because I think that people talking on Ukraine, you have to know what you are talking about, and you have to analyze, you have to be objective. And 27 registered neo-Nazi organizations.
How much power they do have in parliament?
Over 10%, 10.42. It's a very large representation. Now, in October this year, it's going to be new elections, and we'll see what happens then. But I personally believe that all trouble of Ukraine started from the previous elections in October 2012, when this very well-known, very powerful, very appreciated, unfortunately, party called Freedom, Svoboda, got at once from the first round 10.42% in their parliament. It's very much. So it tells you a lot. And now we have this similar phenomenon in Sweden with the Sweden Democrats, this extreme party. But I think, yes, it's a very good point, because there are very many extreme parties in many countries, but not in many countries they are in parliament. And they are commanding such a power.
How is the Jewish population being affected at the moment?
They are afraid, and they are divided in two. One part of them...
First of all, what is the number of the Jewish population in Ukraine? Hundreds of thousands?
No, 200,000.
200,000?
Conservatively. But this is minimum, conservatively 200,000. So people are divided.
Are they mainly on the Russian-speaking or Ukrainian side?
Yes, mainly on Russian-speaking, on eastern part. And people are divided. Jewish people in Soviet Union and in Ukraine were always under persecution. I will tell you a couple of samples in a moment. So they believe that to be united, or vocalize their support to regime, it will contribute to their survival. So they said, yes, we are fine. But in part of them are immigrating to Israel very speedily. Aliyah to Israel from Ukraine is
hundreds or thousands, or
no. It's thousands per month, 7, 4, 5, something like that. But it never happened before. People live there quite normally. Part of them very worried. And how could it be okay if you have in power this, what they call right sector, the organization, militant neo-Nazi organization, which is helping to the new regime to sustain its power? How can it be normal? And also, I'm very worried, and I am worried about it, not from yesterday, but for 4 years now, since 2010, when previous president, Mr. Yushchenko, had a nerve before he left the office to award a hero of Ukraine to two leaders of Ukrainian nationalistic movement during the war, Stepan Bandera and Roman Shukhevich. Shukhevich has 4 Iron Crosses. He was a German officer, German army officer. And Bandera was ideology leader of this movement. So how can you make, in the current day, having Holocaust as a precedent, can you make heroes from people like that? And this should be addressed.
Yeah, I think this topic should be addressed on much larger way than we are now able.
I agree.
Because we have come into the end. But 1 or 2 questions with brief answers.
Okay.
What was the main lesson from Simon Wiesenthal for you personally?
It's a good question because, well, you believe you know your friend, and then your friend passes, and then time passes, and then you do a big film on him, and then you learning again something. To me, his fairness. That he, as he says in film, that he didn't divide the graves of victims of the Holocaust. Jews are in one corner and the others in another corner, that he was fair to any victim of Holocaust. And also in life, and also his courage and bravery and his attitude to memory, that it should be alive, very active.
And the other question, what's the topic or what are you working at the moment? What's your next thing? Film, book or?
Next thing is book which grew from this film. And this book's name is Dark Stars, Wise Hearts.
Dark Stars, Wise Hearts.
And this is a personal reflections on the Holocaust in modern days. And I'm telling about, Wiesenthal is part of the book, but just one part of many. And I'm telling about how Holocaust reflects in our lives today, all over the world, from United States to Finland.
Inna Rogatchi, it was a pleasure to have you with us today. Unfortunately, the time is limited, as always. I think we could have continued for another 45 minutes or even more.
Easily.
But I thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.